We're here to unpack those really complex stories, the ones that make you go, aha, but, without drowning you in details.
Exactly. And today, we've got a story that's, it's a tough one. It's about this incredible duality.
Yeah, a scientist, a genius, really, who figured out how to feed billions of people.
But who also personally unleashed some of the most horrific weapons imaginable onto the battlefield.
We're talking about Fritz Haber, the German chemist.
And our mission today really is to walk through his life. Look at the science, the breakthroughs.
The huge world-changing achievements.
Right. But also grapple with his role in the war, the chemical weapons, the personal cost.
To the tragedies, yeah.
Yeah.
And the big questions it leaves us with about science and responsibility. We've got biographical sketches, detailed histories of World War I, chemical warfare.
Lots to draw on. So let's start at the beginning. Haber was born in Breslau, Germany, back in 1868. Came from a pretty well-off German Jewish family.
And he was into chemistry early on, wasn't he? Really fascinated by it, even as a kid.
Oh, definitely. He studied all over Germany, Heidelberg, Berlin, Charlottenburg, and got his doctorate in organic chemistry in 1891.
Our sources mention he sort of bounced around a bit job-wise at first.
Yeah, moving from job to job, I think they say. But then he landed at the Polytechnic in Karlsruhe around 1894, and that's where he really found his footing in physical chemistry.
And started making a name for himself. What kind of work was he doing there initially?
Well, quite a range, actually. Early stuff on hydrocarbons, but then he got deep into electrochemistry. Published a textbook in 98. He was looking at, how electricity drives chemical reactions, things like electrolytic oxidation.
That sounds pretty fundamental.
It was. And he even co-invented the glass electrode with Kramer, something still used today for pH measurements, which is amazing. He also did a lot of work on flames, like the Bunsen burner flame.
Just watching flames? Or is there more to it?
Oh, much more. He was digging into the details, chemical equilibrium in flames, how to measure their temperature accurately. It shows you his mindset, right? Really dissecting these basic processes, understanding them inside out.
And that deep understanding, that knack for dissecting processes, that led him to tackle one of the biggest problems of the time.
Exactly, the nitrogen problem, how to get nitrogen out of the air.
Because nitrogen's everywhere in the air, like 80%, but it just doesn't like to react with things, right? It's inert.
Precisely. And yet, it's absolutely vital for fertilizers, for growing food, and ironically, for explosives too. Before Haber, getting nitrogen compounds like ammonia on an industrial scale was really difficult, inefficient.
So how did he crack it? What was the breakthrough in 1905?
It was brilliant, really. He figured out that if you used really high pressure, way higher than people thought practical, and the right catalyst, he landed on iron, you could force nitrogen gas and hydrogen gas to combine directly into ammonia.
Wow. Just pressure and a catalyst.
Well, it just makes it sound simple, but figuring out those exact conditions, the right catalyst, managing the high pressure, that was the genius. And then crucially, an engineer named Carl Bosch at BASF figured out how to take Haber's lab setup and scale it up massively for industry.
Right, hence the Haber-Bosch process.
That's the one.
And the impact. It's hard to even grasp, isn't it?
It's immense, often called one of the most important inventions of the 20th century, maybe the most important.
Because it basically allowed us to create synthetic fertilizers on a massive scale.
Which led directly to huge increases in crop yields, feeding billions who otherwise wouldn't have been fed. The numbers are staggering. Over 150 million tons of ammonia made this way every year now, like 99% of the world's supply.
And he won the Nobel Prize for Chemistry for this in 1918. A lifesaver, literally.
A true architect of plenty. But This is where the story pivots sharply.
Yeah. Because around 1911, he moves to Berlin, becomes the director of this big new institute, the Institute for Physical Chemistry and Electrochemistry at the Kaiser Wilhelm Gesellschaft.
Right, a major research hub, really prestigious, connected academia, industry, government.
And then World War I breaks out, and Germany suddenly has a big problem.
The British blockade. They couldn't get nitrates from Chile anymore.
Which they needed for, well, both fertilizer and explosives.
Exactly. And suddenly, the Haber-Bosch process wasn't just about food. It was strategically vital for the war effort. Germany could make its own nitrates for munitions because of Haber's invention. That dual-use nature became critical.
And Haber, he didn't just let them use his process, he got involved. Deeply involved.
Totally. He threw himself and his institute's resources into the German war effort. He wasn't just advising, he was actively developing new weapons.
Poison gas, starting with chlorine.
And he wasn't directing from some office miles away. He was right there on the Western Front, personally overseeing the first major chlorine gas attack at Ypres, Belgium in 1915.
Our sources describe this eerie gray-green cloud drifting over the Allied lines. Panic. Chaos. It ripped a huge hole, like 8,000 yards wide, in their front.
A horrifying debut for this new weapon, and a clear war crime even then.
Yeah, you mentioned the Hague Conventions of 1899 and 1907. They specifically banned using poison or poisoned weapons.
They did. It was an early attempt to put some limits on warfare, and this just blew right past them.
But the most powerful condemnation, maybe, came from much closer to home, from his wife, Clara Immerwahr.
Ah, Clara, yes. We absolutely have to talk about her. She wasn't just Haber's wife. She was an incredible scientist herself.
The first woman in Germany to get a doctorate in chemistry, right? From Breslau, same place as Fritz, graduated magna cum laude too.
An amazing achievement, especially back then. And she was a pacifist, very involved in women's rights, a real force in her own right.
But her marriage to Haber, it sounds like it wasn't easy. Societal pressures kind of sidelined her own research career.
Yeah, the expectations of the time were harsh. She translated some of his work, but she felt stifled, overshadowed. She apparently said his ruthlessly self-assertive personality just sort of destroyed hers.
That's heartbreaking. And then came his war work.
Which she was absolutely, vehemently against. She saw it as a complete betrayal of science, a perversion of the ideals of science, she called it.
A sign of barbarity.
Strong words.
Very. And she'd even seen the dangers firsthand, apparently witnessed an accident in his lab where someone died during the gas research.
Which leads to the ultimate tragedy. May 2nd, 1915, just after he got back from Ypres.
She took his military pistol and shot herself in the chest. Died in their son Herman's arms.
It's just horrific. And Haber's reaction.
It's chilling. The very next morning, he left, went to the Eastern Front to oversee the first gas attack against the Russians. He just left.
He just left. Her death was barely reported. The reason's officially unclear, but everyone connects it to her horror at his work.
Yeah.
And their son, Herman, he later took his own life, too, in 1946. The tragedy echoed down the years.
So this personal nightmare is unfolding, while Haber is essentially pioneering large-scale chemical warfare, the chemists' war, they call it.
Right. Ypres was the big, terrifying start with chlorine gas. Nasty stuff burns the eyes, throat, lungs. You suffocate.
But it didn't stop there, did it? The gases got worse.
Oh, yeah. The French responded with phosgene later in 1915. That was even more insidious.
How so?
Well, it was colorless, smelled faintly like moldy hay, apparently, so harder to detect than the obvious chlorine cloud, and deadlier. Plus, the symptoms could be delayed.
Delayed, like you breathe it in and feel okay at first?
Exactly, for maybe 24 hours or more. Then suddenly your lungs fill with fluid. Soldiers could seem fine after an attack, then just collapse the next day. Germany developed its own version, diphosgene, even more potent.
That's terrifying. And then came the really infamous one.
Mustard gas in 1917, codenamed Yellow Cross. An oily liquid, not really a gas at room temperature, but it vaporized.
And the effects were just brutal, weren't they?
Horrific. Huge blisters on the skin, blindness, vomiting, internal and external bleeding. It attacked the mucous membranes. Death could take weeks. There's a quote from Vera Britton, a nurse.
Oh, I think I read that. About the great mustard-colored blisters, blind eyes.
All sticky and stuck together, always fighting for breath. It captures the horror. Mustard gas wasn't necessarily about killing lots of people quickly. It was about incapacitating them, overwhelming medical systems, making whole areas of the battlefield toxic for days or weeks.
And it caused the vast majority of gas casualties for the British, something like 90%.
That's right. The numbers overall are staggering. Maybe 90,000 deaths directly from gas and WWI, but 1.3 million casualties total. People injured, blinded, suffering long-term lung damage.
And the psychological terror.
Yeah.
Gas shock. Must have been as bad as shell shock.
Absolutely. The fear of that silent, invisible attack. And the way people died from gas. Phosgene victims basically drowning in their own lung fluid over hours, days. Awful. Many survivors had lifelong health problems, breathing issues, poor eyesight, prone to TB. John Singer Sargent's painting, Gassed, really conveys that haunting image of lines of blinded soldiers.
So facing this new horror, what did soldiers do? How did they try to protect themselves?
Well, it was a constant, desperate race. At first, defenses were really basic, just rags soaked in water, or, famously, urine. Simple goggles.
Urine? Seriously?
Yeah, the ammonia in urine could neutralize some of the early gases, like chlorine to a small extent, but things got more sophisticated fast. The British developed gas helmets, basically flannel bags soaked in chemicals like sodium hyposulfite for chlorine, then sodium phenolate for phosgene. You pulled it over your head.
Sounds claustrophobic and probably not very effective long term.
They improved them, added eyepieces, better chemicals like hexamin in the pH helmet. But the real breakthrough was the box respirator.
Like a proper gas mask with a filter canister.
Exactly. A mask connected by a hose to a canister filled with charcoal and chemical granules that absorbed or neutralized the poison gas. The British small box respirator, the SBR, became standard issue. Soldiers trusted it.
It became a prized possession, you said. Like, more important than their rifles sometimes.
In retreats, yes, because it meant survival against this particular threat. But it was always a race. A new gas would appear, then a scramble to update the filters or masks. It shows how central chemical warfare became. Fatality rates actually stayed fairly low, around 3%, but the number of gas casualties shot up dramatically by 1918.
So the masks worked, but the gas use just kept increasing.
Pretty much. And they even had masks for horses, dogs, carrier pigeons, and warning systems, like special gongs or rattles to signal a gas attack.
How did they actually deliver the gas? I picture those clouds from Ypres. Was it always released from cylinders?
That was the first method, yeah. Big, heavy cylinders opened when the wind was right. But that was risky. Wind changes. You could gas your own troops. Happened to the British at Loos. Plus, cylinders were targets.
So they needed something better.
Artillery shells, that was a major development. You could fire gas shells accurately, regardless of wind, much deeper into enemy lines. Phosgene shells were particularly sneaky. They'd land with just a little plop, not a big explosion, releasing the nearly invisible gas.
Surprise factor.
Big time. And for really saturating an area, especially with things like mustard gas, they developed projectors. The British Livens projector was basically a giant mortar that fired the entire gas cylinder as a projectile. They'd set up hundreds, fire them all at once. Imagine thousands of gas canisters landing almost simultaneously.
Just overwhelming. So after the war, did this horrific genie just go back in the bottle?
Not entirely. Gas was used in some later conflicts, though not on the same scale between major powers. The British used it against Bolsheviks in Russia, the Spanish in Morocco, Italy, in Libya, and Ethiopia.
Despite the horror, people kept using it.
Which led to stronger international efforts to ban it. The Geneva Protocol in 1925 was a big step. It banned the use of chemical and bacteriological weapons. Most WWI powers signed on, though not necessarily the stockpiling or making part.
And the U.S. took ages to ratify until 1975.
Yeah, it took a while. The big comprehensive ban, the Chemical Weapons Convention prohibiting development, production, stockpiling, and use, didn't come until 1993.
But in World War II, even though everyone had huge stockpiles, they mostly didn't use gas on the battlefield against each other.
Largely, yes. Mutual deterrence seems to have held. Everyone knew the other side could retaliate massively. Of course, the Nazis horrifically used Zyklon B gas, but that was in the extermination camps, a different kind of horror. Later on, the Iran-Iraq War saw significant battlefield use again, sadly.
And the legacy isn't just treaties and memories, it's still physically there, isn't it? The unexploded shells.
Oh, absolutely. Millions of them still being found in France and Belgium. The iron harvest farmers pull up every year. It's incredibly dangerous work, dealing with corroded shells filled with WWI poisons, causes injuries, contaminates the soil. Verdun, for example, still has serious heavy metal contamination.
And getting rid of the old stockpiles safely is a huge headache. You can't just dump them in the ocean anymore.
No, thank goodness. Environmental rules are much stricter now, but safe disposal is complex and expensive. It's a long, dangerous shadow.
What about Haber himself? What happened to him after the war?
Well, he threw himself back into science, trying to rebuild his institute, mend Germany's scientific reputation internationally. He even had this slightly wild scheme to extract gold from seawater to help pay Germany's war debts.
Gold from seawater. Did that work?
No, it turned out there wasn't nearly enough gold dissolved to make it viable. A failed project. But then came the Nazis in 1933.
And Haber was Jewish. Despite his Nobel Prize, his service to Germany.
Didn't matter. The anti-Jewish laws forced him to resign. Reports say he was utterly crushed, heartbroken by this betrayal from the country he'd served so intensely. He left Germany, died in Basel, Switzerland, just a year later, in 1934. He was actually on his way to explore a research position in Palestine.
What an end. A life defined by such incredible creation and such terrible destruction.
It's the core paradox, isn't it? The Haber-Bosch process, a monumental force for good, feeding the planet.
Truly life-giving on a scale rarely seen.
And then the poison gas. A force for unimaginable suffering and death pioneered and personally pushed forward by the same man.
It brings you right back to what Clara Immerwahr said, doesn't it? That perversion of science.
It really does. It forces that question. Is science neutral? Can a scientist, especially one who actively participates in weaponizing their discoveries, wash their hands of how it's used?
Haber certainly didn't seem to think so during the war.
Yeah.
He embraced that role. But looking back, how do you even weigh it? The billions fed versus the horrors unleashed.
It's almost impossible to balance that scale. His genius reshaped humanity, fundamentally, for better and for worse.
So the question for us, maybe, is what lessons does his story hold? About innovation, ethics, responsibility, especially now with the kinds of powerful technologies we're developing today.
That's the thought to leave you with, I think. What are the boundaries, and who draws them?